call the Gardner City Council meeting to order. Please rise with me and recite with me the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a rather light, regular agenda for this evening. It's going to be very heavy on the budget, but we do have a presentation to start off having to do with updates at the Gardner Municipal Airport. I believe that Michael Kramer is going to be making that presentation for us. Good evening, Michael. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just wanted to come before you and give a presentation on the airport, some of the projects, and gain some direction on some of the upcoming CIP issues that are included as placeholders in the 2019-2020 budget. And to start off with, I guess, following a series of audit issues back in way long before I was here, but following some audit issues, Council started reviewing the airport in 2014 and 2015, and Council made the decision to bring the airport back under the city's operational control, and that began in January of 2016. And wanted to give you a little bit of update on current airport projects. And so we have the draft airport layout plan that was completed in 2017. It identifies $8.8 million in future CIP projects through the year 2037. These are primarily projects that have to do with runways, land acquisitions, things that have to do with actual flying. It doesn't include in it the sanitary sewer or building replacements of the terminal and the maintenance FBO hangar. Again, those are included in the CIP placeholders. On the projects, we'll look at our airport layout map, and this is actually the property map. Down to the south of the airport, off the end of the runway, we previously completed projects acquiring the Sizemore tract and the Paulson tract. Those were both FAA grant projects. And then in the future CIP, we have the Gardner tract, which is the last remaining property down south of the existing runway. And then we're currently working on negotiating for the Baker tract, and that's the 17 acres up in the kind of a flag-shaped piece that was approved in early 2018 to do the project. And currently we're negotiating through our consultant with the property owners and their trust attorneys. The project, since it's FAA funded, has to follow the federal procurement guidelines. And so one of the things that I would urge you not to do, or the airport board or anybody associated with it, is to have discussions about that property, because you can jeopardize that, the federal guidelines. And so our negotiator is currently working on that. It has been in their court for a while, but it's probably best if we don't discuss that any further until the appropriate time. In addition, we have the sanitary sewer project. Obviously, as we all know, back in April of 2017, the system had failed again, and the decision was made to abandon the existing septic field and to pursue alternative treatment. A report was completed in September of 2017 by our consultant recommending a gravity sewer system. And this year we entered into a contract with them to do that design work. They have completed their survey. They're working on the design, ran into a few issues that they're trying to work through. And so we expect those preliminary draft of those plans anytime. And again, the sanitary sewer project is included in the 2019 placeholder for a CIP. Hangars out at the Gardner, and I apologize that the presentation may not flow just so, but I think when we come to the end and you see the decisions we're asking you to make, I think it'll probably fit together, and if you want to go back and review any information, I'm happy to do so. Hangars at the Gardner Municipal Airport, we have 96 hangars, I believe, including 88 T hangars, 5 open air T hangars, 2 larger hangars, and then 1 maintenance hangar. In addition to those hangars, we have the flight school building, the pilot's lounge, and a garage attached to the main hangar building. And so the flight school building is shown there. The G labels where the garage and some other offices are. L is where the pilot's lounge is located, and then the rest of it is office and storage, along with the main maintenance hangar. The maintenance hangar was constructed in about 1941, and has at this point multiple issues. Just a little bit of a look at some of the hangar configurations. So the T hangars back up back to back. These are buildings A1, A2, B1, and B2. Each of them have about 10 spaces in them, and the rents range from, the rents on these are $135 a month. Hangars C and D. So C1 and D1 are closed hangars. C2 there to the south is the open air hangars. And then the ones that I said were larger rectangular hangars, those are the D2, building D2 there, those 2. And then we also lease ground to the VAA, EAA, and their existing building is shown there. Their lease, I believe, is $100 a year. Building E1, one of the nicer buildings, the rent on that is $215 per month. And F1, the rent's $210 per month currently. So in 2016, we did a study of the hangar rates. It was done prior to my coming on board and by a consultant, GBA. They went out to the market and they looked at other airports and looked at their average hangar rates, recommended increases that the market they felt would support, and basically then in 2016, that report was reviewed by the airport board and then by council, and the rates were determined to go up $15 for building C1 and D1. So they, C2 is the open air hangars. They decided to leave those rates where they were at $65. C1 and D1, they raised from 85 to 100. Buildings A1, 2, B1 and B2 and D2, they raised $5. E1, they raised $5. And F1, they raised $5. of all of the hangar rates, and the 2017 is the current hangar rate, only building F1 is in the average rate range. There is a hangar waiting list currently. It was reduced significantly when we required a deposit to be on the hangar waiting list. Fire inspections. So in 2011, or I'm sorry, on May 11th of 2018, we did fire inspections. We asked Johnson County to come out, Fire District number 1, and they began what will be the first of an annual fire inspection. And so they reviewed all of the buildings at the airport, including the terminal and maintenance hangar, and then all of the T hangars. So we got to the point of having them do the inspections based on MPR's recommendations. And then in 2017, we had the FAA came out and they did their standard land use inspection. And so the FAA randomly opens some hangars and looks at them. They review your municipal standards, your lease agreements, make sure everything's in order, and then they make some recommendations. And one of their recommendations was that we do annual fire inspections. And so we began talking to the fire department about that, and they scheduled them and completed those in May. There was an initial Friday minute memo that went out the same week that they did the inspections, because one of the items that came up was fuel and fuel storage. And so there was quite a bit of fuel stored out there, and our standards actually say that you can store fuel. So that's one of the issues that we'll have to follow up on. There's some adjustment we need to do to our municipal standards. And then again on July 6th, once we had the actual summary reports from the fire department, those were provided in a Friday minute memo as well. So on the fire inspections, the next step and it will be to review existing hangar modifications and electrical issues. So one of the things that was noted in the fire inspections was that some of the tenants had done hangar modifications that weren't necessarily to code, and there were electrical issues that were flagged as fire issues. And those could either be modifications to the existing electrical system, so they added additional circuits and wiring and lights and outlets and such, or they're using extension cords, etc., to be able to run whatever they've got plugged in. The second step on there is we're currently getting quotes to rekey the airport, which will essentially mean replacing all of the lock cores, if not the locks themselves. So out there right now, we have keys to get into all of the hangars, but they are all different because they're all by the tenant, provided their own. And so one of the requirements for fire code is that they have a Knox box with a master key to be able to quickly get in. Again, we'll be updating the airport minimum standards so that we can comply with fire codes. And then the terminal and maintenance hangar has multiple issues. There's electrical issues, there's water intrusion issues. They're in the maintenance hangar itself. There's an insulation material that either needs to be removed or it needs to be covered up. And according to the research that we've done, the cost of doing that exceeds, what you should be putting into the building for the useful life. And so we do have a CIP placeholder in 2023 to replace the terminal building and the maintenance hangar. And so that, with doing that, and in addition to that CIP project, we will be trying to, take care of some of the low-hanging fruit out there to improve the situation, make sure that, there's good egress, that there's not stuff, stored in the exits, in the aisles, some stuff like that. And then also if there's some minor electrical that we can go out and fix at little cost, we'll be working on that. We've reviewed the fire inspections with MPR, and I reviewed those with Shannon, and then we had several conversations with them. And from their standpoint, as far as the terminal and maintenance hangar issues, from an insurability, they don't feel it's to the level that we would need to evict our current tenant, as long as we're working towards a resolution. And then also, if it was a significant life, health, safety issue that rose to an eviction level, then yes, we would have to do that. And so that would come from the fire inspection, if they would tell us that we need to evict a tenant. So in April, we did a hangar tenant survey, and we really wanted to get some feedback on what projects were important to the hangar tenants, and if they were willing to raise their hangar rates to pay for projects. And then also the issue out there of subleasing is supposed to stop at the end of 2018, and so I wanted to get a better understanding of that issue. And prior to that, in 2018, again, we didn't have enough board members to hold meetings. So in April, we sent out hangar surveys via email to the tenants. We had 57 responses. Again, 96 hangars total, including the maintenance hangar. So about 60% responded. First question was pretty simple. Do you currently...
May I ask a question real quick? I'm sorry to interrupt. Did the lease, the question about this go out to the lessees, or was it the actual...
This went out directly to the tenants leasing and then the subleaser.
And the subleaser, okay.
If we had an email address for them, yes. It only went out via email. So we just asked, do you lease or do you sublease? What hangar building are you in? And so you can see we had pretty diverse responses from all of the hangar buildings. Current question again on the subleasing. It's currently set to not continue past December of 2018, and would you prefer it to continue? Overwhelming percentage said yes, we'd like to continue sublease practice. This is an issue that I think we need to go back and review, both from a risk standpoint and from a standpoint with the advisory board, as far as, okay, if all the folks out there are saying don't, that they want to continue subleasing, then why are we changing it? And so I just want to make sure that we're headed in the right direction, and at some point this may come back to council, but certainly more discussion at the airport advisory board. Capital improvement projects. So we asked them about reconstruction of runway 1735, which is the north-south runway. from a from a grass turf runway to a paved runway, construction of a sanitary sewer, construction of a new terminal building, construction of a new maintenance hangar, and relocation of runway 826 to the south. And so you can see overwhelmingly construct a new sanitary sewer, followed by the terminal building. And one thing I should point out on here, the sanitary sewer, the terminal, and the maintenance hangar are not eligible for FAA funding. Question 5, are you willing to have a hangar rent increase in order to fund improvements? About 44% said yes. And previously when I had talked with the airport board, it wasn't even a maybe. It was no, we don't want to increase hangar rates. And I asked them specifically on the sewer, and it was the sewer should be paid for by the city at large. And so this is, while it's not 50-50, it is a significant number that recognize that, you may have to increase in order to actually have improvements. So 46 out of those 57 have continued, to this point. So still a pretty good percentage of completion. And then if you answered yes, you got another question, a bonus. How much are you willing to increase your hangar rent? And the majority are in that $10 to $20 a month is what they're willing to increase. So that's just kind of a little background on the, what folks think out there as far as, at least what they responded on one direct survey. And this relates then to everything we're going to talk about from here forward, because it's really, now getting towards the part where I'm going to say, okay, let's get some council direction on some decision making.
Can I interrupt before you get there? Is there a plan to address the basic, just some of the basics, basic maintenance requirements, like what would be required of any building and that the city is in charge of? Like any corrective action plan, for example, for the fire inspection?
So the fire inspection, we've touched on a little bit as far as what's coming forward. And we'll be reviewing that with our building and codes, and then back again with the fire. And in regards to regular maintenance, yes, we do perform regular maintenance and routine maintenance. And there is funding in the budget currently for, some what I would consider smaller things like hangar door replacements, etc. And like the lock change out will come out of our normal operating budget for the airport. So we're primarily, at this point, leaning more towards policy decisions on some of the larger CIP projects and general fund. So the airport fund is an enterprise fund. As such, and in talking with financial folks, enterprise funds generally should try and be self-sufficient. The current fund balance looks really good. It looks good through 2021, 22, and 23. Primarily because of the inflows of debt financing and FAA financing. And then as those start to pay off, you can see in 2024 and 2025, it definitely goes negative. What's also not shown in the fund balance, though, is if you remember some of the previous presentations that Laura's done, the general fund subsidizes the existing operation. So for all the for all of the billing and the paperwork and our staff time, etc. So in 2017, the general fund subsidies were $108,000. So in the airport budget, it just shows 108 in and 108 out. And so it doesn't show up at all in the fund balance, but the general fund is subsidizing the airport. 2018, that's estimated at $146,000, and then 2019, $165,000, and 2020, $175,000. So with that being said, we're asking for council policy direction on should the airport ultimately be self-sufficient or subsidized, and kind of just a general feel of where where we should head with that, and if we're subsidizing, kind of at what level. And so that would include the general fund subsidies that I just talked about, the utility funds. So I apologize, I threw utility funds in there. And essentially on the utilities out there, we are paying the interdepartmental rate. So it is significantly lower, especially on the electrical rates. And mainly I threw it in there just because I wanted to make sure you were aware of that fact. And then the CIP projects, so the sanitary sewer, the terminal and maintenance building, should we be subsidizing those and subsidizing, for a potential tenant? So I didn't know, I guess at this point I would kind of ask, if you have any thoughts on subsidies of the airport in general.
I will open it up to the members of the governing body. We'll start over here with Lee, because I know you've been closest to the situation. So
my feeling on it generally is that regardless of what we do from this point forward, the airport is going to require, short of closing the airport, which I think is unacceptable, the airport requires investment. It's not going to be self-sufficient, and if we leave it the way it is without investing in it further, it will always be subsidized. It will always require subsidy. Without investing in it, without putting money in it in a smart way, putting the sanitary sewer out there is a very smart thing to do at this point, because nobody will ever come to build another hangar, or we're not going to get another tenant like the VAA out there unless we can have some basic services for the human beings that will be patronizing the airport. We've got a lot of, there's a lot of examples. At least Summit Airport's a good example of an airport that, I don't know that it's entirely self-sufficient, but my guess is that it is. It's a very successful airport, and it's got a lot of home built and traffic, just like what we see in our own airport. Benton, Kansas has another one called Stearman Field. Benton, Kansas is a municipality that's a fraction of the size of Gardner, and they've got a thriving municipal airport. And it just shows what a little bit of investment can do. But at this point right now, we've got inspection reports that are, one's a year and a half old, that I don't know, I'm not aware of anything that's been done to address any of the issues found in this inspection report that we funded in 2016 at a rate of $2,000. So we're most likely going to be on the hook for another one of these inspections, so that we can reestablish a baseline to see what we've got to do and develop another list. At this point, we don't know if the building's a total loss or not. And we also have tenants out there that are willing to rent the building in its current state. knowing that it has some issues. But this Apex environmental consultants that we hired at the end of 2016 told us that it was very minimal what would have to be done to get the buildings in good shape, at least in rentable condition. So we've got a tenant out there that still has indicated to me that they're willing to rent that, at least the flight school building. So the answer to your question, should the airport ultimately be self-sufficient or subsidized? It should ultimately be self-sufficient, but in the meantime, it's going to have to be subsidized.
I would also add, Lee, that as long as we're doing shared services, fund exchanges, we can never say it's going to not be subsidized. I mean, we're still going to be doing the billing, we're going to be doing the utility work, we're doing the work with improvement, maintenance and those kind of things. A lot of that stuff's going to be coming right out of other departments, so I don't think that that's even a possibility. But Lee makes a good point. The airport fund needs to be self-sufficient ultimately, but the only way we're going to be able to do it is to attract another fixed-based operator so that they can, pay the freight for a lot of those improvements. Anyway, yes, Rich?
How many square feet are the average hangars out there? Like the groups of them? Is there like an average hangar is how many square feet?
That I don't know. I know that back in the 2016 hangar rate study, they compared the square footage to storage units as well. So I don't know exactly how many
Googling
square.
is getting to be about $40 a square foot for construction cost, but that's concrete and everything for an average hangar. So I'm guessing it's going to be around there. But I would think if we had all shared services out there, it wouldn't be too hard for somebody if we said, we'll do the lease for $100 or whatever, that they start building hangars out there on the land that we already own to try to recoup that cost.
So, one of the things in the airport board has brought up construction of hangars, previously. One thing on hangars, though, initially, all of the revenue from said hangars is going towards debt service to pay off said hangars.
I'm not talking about the city doing it. I'm talking about us partnering with someone who's going to invest their own time and money. We'll issue the building permits and allow them to lease the land from us, and then they put the hangars up, and they're their hangars.
Yeah, I'm aware of other airports in other parts of the country that basically do that. They sell plots of land, and you can buy a big enough plot of land to put your own hangar on. And you don't really own the land, you own the use of the land, I guess. I'm not sure of the legal agreement, but probably a 99-year lease or whatever, a transferable lease or whatever. But you own the building that sits on it.
And that's what the VAA is they
Right,
lease
so we
the
need to look for
land.
more opportunities like that, in my estimation.
Yeah.
And there, I know we can find a ton of people that
But there are some things that we've got to do first
Right.
in terms of cleaning our own house. We got to get some of these basic things taken care of that the fire department showed us and that our environmental consultants showed us. We've got to take care of those things.
And you need to realize that environmental consultant report, and we don't even delve into that because we show that building as a future replacement because we believe that the terminal building, the flight school, and the maintenance hangar have all reached their end of life. And so our building and codes has said previously and in 2017 that it would cost more to fix the issues in the flight school than to replace it.
But isn't that a governing body decision?
It is a governing
Right.
body decision,
Right.
but
So-
again,
But
based on the economics.
If I have, well, here's the thing, and this is where we have a problem because given the option, I would rather us offer that repair and replacement and rental to private parties than having the city do it. So if we went in and said, look, if you fix this whole thing up, you can have it for however much the cost estimate is, because I've talked to this gentleman, I called this guy, and I said, what's the environmental impact on this? He said, it's no different than if you're going in and there's mold or whatever in your basement. You go in there, there's remediation companies that do it, they can do it all day long, and they go in there and they clean it up, and then it's replaced back in, and of course the problems are fixed that caused the issue.
And they're not, because the roof leaks currently.
I understand, but
Okay.
roofs can be fixed, Michael.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I'm saying that all those issues that it has can be fixed.
Yeah.
And if we have a tenant who's willing to pay for all those repairs, and then say, hey, look, we give you 10 or 15 or however many years it is because whatever the cost is, and they're willing to absorb that, I say we jump on that. Because then we're actually getting something out of it. They're fixing our building, and somebody's actually using it. And so now we are being a good partner with someone and showing that we are willing to work with people.
Yeah, I would be interested to see the analysis that reached the conclusion that the buildings have reached their end of life. Where is that engineering report? I mean, is that something you can get to us?
And I'd have to talk with building and codes, but I did review it with both our fire protection inspection professional, and they felt the same way on the maintenance end.
I'm sure in its current condition it appears that way, but
Yeah.
it doesn't mean it has to stay that way.
Yeah. So, yeah, so the bottom line is, you know, the other thing that I'm aware of, I know quite a few members of the VAA and the leadership of the VAA, and I know they've had some difficulty with the city in getting their. They want to do what they're referring to as a bump out of the hangar.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of I don't know, for lack of a better term, red tape and delays in the process that have caused them extra cost.
So again, I believe that was covered in Friday memo items.
Yeah.
The delay was not based on the city. We've had the building permit reviewed, sitting there waiting for them to pick up, pending FAA approval.
Right.
In 2013, the VAA, in order to put the existing building, the EAA, VAA, and then the Gardner Municipal Airport, did a revised airport layout plan
Right.
to allow for the existing building to be put there. That required the runway to be shortened. The runway, the existing end of runway markers, when we started looking at it, did not match any existing end of runway plan. And so we have worked this year, and I believe that several members of council have been copied on the emails with the EAA and the FAA to resolve that issue, to provide a new airport layout plan, to move the end of the runway so that they don't have that issue in the future. And that is not a city issue, that is an FAA issue, that's following policies and procedures that weren't done in the past.
Yeah, my point in bringing that up is not to toss anybody under the bus. It's mainly just to say that we've got to be advocates for our customers. Our customers being our tenants in every case. I mean, we've got to be on the FAA's doorstep with, on behalf of our customer and pushing these things through with enthusiasm. And I don't, or at least giving the impression that we're doing those things for the VA. The impression that I've been that's been shared with me is that it's been the opposite. It's not been very easy to work with the city on these things. So I'm not, and like I said, I'm not saying anybody's at fault here. I'm just saying we've got to work on that perception.
And I agree with working on perception, but the reality is staff and our consultant worked our tails off to get the thing approved through the FAA and followed their policies and procedures.
So the point of that is if we have a good reputation with our tenants, we'll attract more tenants. And the other thing that I was going to bring up at the end of the meeting, and we can talk about it again, is possibly like Rich had alluded to, a public-private partnership with some outside entities that may be interested in investing in the airport, and whether it be buying helping us build a new hangar building and flight school building, removing all that and replacing it with new or not. Or doing something else with the airport, building a restaurant out there or whatever. I think what we need this council to decide is on perhaps directing staff to come up with an incentive policy specifically regarding the airport and what we can do to partner with outside entities on the airport.
Looking for consensus on that?
Yeah, and we can talk
Yeah.
about it during council updates.
I'm absolutely in agreement with that. I mean, I think anything we can do to improve the airport, and it is an asset to us, and I mean, that seems like a fairly low-risk opportunity for us, so I'd be absolutely for something like that, if there's interest.
I think we need to lay out a map that shows from point A to point B, and maybe this is over several years, but we're going to subsidize and make these investments. And then, in the meantime, on a parallel track, look for that public-private partnership. Because to your point, Lee, we can't sell something that's in disarray. We need to take care of our home, get our sewer going, and we need to put that on a timeline, a short timeline, I might add. Understand what that investment is, how that affects our general fund, how that affects some of our other investments that have hundreds of millions of dollars tied to the return side of it, and then work towards a more self-sufficient percentage, maybe a 80-20 or 90-10 with that public-private partnership. But I would be willing to support that, but I'd like to see a roadmap of subsidies, what that looks like, what the investment is, and then rank that against other projects that this city has. So that would be I-35 and Gardner Road, which is a regional project. That would be Plan B and Plan C for water sources, so that we don't have all of our eggs in one basket. And then maybe look at this and several other medium projects.
Yeah, frontage road, acquisition of right-of-way.
Yeah. The question I did have, since I have the floor, is, Michael, what FAA subsidies is the municipal airport getting annually?
So we get an FAA grant allocation of about $150,000, give or take, per year. And those, then we apply for specific projects to spend those funds.
Okay.
And of the projects identified in our ALP, until we get out to the out years of reconstructing runways and such, those are the only grant funds available to
And then on
us.
top of that, we have the 105 to 110,000 that we're contributing on top of that?
That would be more towards operations, et
Correct,
cetera.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then if we were to raise hangar rates, that you gave us a spectrum of $10 to $20, that's going to generate $5-6 grand?
Correct.
Okay.
I believe that'd be about right.
And we need 135 for the sewer?
Yeah, and so I think I've got sewer and the terminal building in the next couple slides here to make some decisions on.
Well, let's put things into proper perspective here. How many grants do we currently have? How much money is currently has the FAA invested in our airport to date?
To date, and I don't know the exact figure, but I believe to date somewhere around $7 to $8 million.
Okay.
And we just got another
And-
grant approved for land acquisition for about
Correct, and
$600,000.
so our ALP, again, that's where the grants flow from. Our ALP identifies about $8.8 million of projects over the next 20 years.
So we already have this $7 to $8 million invested from the federal government, and if we don't continue to invest as a city into this asset, and we let things just kind of falter, or fester until we don't have any more hangars rented out. The airport starts to fail, and the city has to just walk away from it. The effect of that will be that we have to pay at least a portion of that, $7 or $8 million.
A portion,
back to
if
the
not
federal
all of
government.
it.
So that's what's at risk if we don't come up with that roadmap. Randy or Councilman Gorsuch mentioned earlier. So my thought process is that's probably our number one priority, is to get that roadmap in place to determine in the short term what are we going to do with the buildings that exist. And my estimation is that they are not out of their useful life, that they have some useful life left, and we should probably take care of some whatever remediation we have to make them rentable again. I'm talking about the areas that are not rented currently. Fix the roof or whatever we're going to do. Minimal investment there and get things rolling. But that should be somewhere in our plan. What do we do with the buildings that currently exist? And then once we get that, then come up with our well, we already have our sewer in the budget for 2019, I believe.
Next year, yep.
Yeah, so it's already in there. We can get that done.
So we're going to wait another 6 months to get that done? I'm just clarifying.
Yeah, the sewer part.
Yeah.
Okay, we have to.
Yeah, because the funds aren't allocated until fiscal year 2019. Which
So spring of 2019, I imagine that's when that's going to get done.
So back to the roadmap, and I'm glad you like it. I really think we need to send that back to the airport board and get the feedback and maybe get that first step from them, and then we can kind of go back and forth, if you will, in a short order. Maybe a work session or something along those lines, but it needs to come from the folks. And I trust, what Lee's saying as a pilot, but I think it needs to start with the people that it's going to affect, come back to us as elected, because I'm not a specialist on that.
Yeah, well, it really what we're talking about is areas that are currently not rented. That we've got to make them rentable. So the people at this dais, and of course the taxpayers, are the ones that are currently out the revenue from what those buildings could be producing.
Yeah, and the other thing is too, as long as those buildings stay stagnant, they're going to continue to deteriorate.
Right,
so it's going to
yes.
be more expensive. The longer those sit, it's going to be more expensive to get those buildings remediated. And that's the biggest concern I've got.
And I do not believe that the flight school, the terminal building is, I don't believe you could get the flight school to a point where it's rentable without significant investment and potentially approaching the replacement cost. And so the roof leaks, there's electrical issues, there's drywall issues. The roof, I believe, in my opinion, it's probably leaked since it was constructed. So the flight school is the only portion that, since we took over operational control, that was ever intended to be leased. And if memory serves, we're talking about a rent of $3,000 a month or so. I'm sorry, a year, not a month, and I may have that figure plus or minus, but even say it's $5,000 to $10,000, I'm not sure that rent even covers. I don't believe it would even cover the cost to rehab the building.
Well, the other issue with that flight school building is that it's not on a slab. It's on an uneven surface. It's been settling.
But
So-
here's my point with this,
Yeah.
is we haven't even checked into it. We have not gone to somebody and said, hey, would you like to do this? And because here's the thing, we go and offer that option to somebody and they say, you know what, you're right, I don't want to rehab that because the cost is so prohibitive. Maybe they go, you know what, instead can we just build one instead?
Well, I think
We haven't had
so-
that conversation.
I think we're going under a core assumption here that the building is not salvageable, and I would like to see, an independent, engineer that was, doing this for a potential third party to give us that same.
Well, it goes back to my roadmap, guys. I think
Yeah.
that you need to set this up.
Yep.
And I'm not talking weeks and months and years here. I'm talking days and weeks. Set this up, get a roadmap, get with the airport board, get some feedback from them. I understand the taxpayers are on the hook. I think we're all diligent at insulating that cost and that revenue, if you will. But I think to all y'all's point, we need to get it on paper, set up some mile markers so that we know when to expect it, what we're looking at, and make some reasonable decisions.
As far as if I could get back to the slide and policy direction, you know, on the flight school itself, assuming we, you know, come up with a renovation cost, replacement cost, etc., are you willing to subsidize the future tenant? That, you know, that's the question.
Well, you're asking me for, I don't have all the information available, but, you know, right.
Yeah.
Well, if there's a public-private partnership, there's going to be some level of subsidy. I mean, that's just the way public-private partnerships work.
Okay.
We're not, I mean, we may be getting a little ahead of ourselves too.
Yeah, and we are getting ahead of ourselves. I mean,
The renovation part, I'm just talking about remediation of the mold currently and possibly fixing the roof so that it doesn't leak anymore. And then renting the place out for storage. We have a tenant right now that's willing to rent the place.
So
not going through the whole place and redoing all the drywall and all that. I mean, why not allow the tenant that's there that wants to rent it, and while we collect the revenue from that,
so
we can also come up with our plan long term. What are we going to do?
So I think that a roadmap would be good. I think that on the existing flight school building and the garage portion and the portion that's not rented adjacent to the maintenance hangar, that space was, from the time we took over operational control, intended to be used for city purposes and solely for our purposes and storage and office space. And that decision was, you know, predates myself. Again, we can look at the flight school again, take another look at it. We can come back with an outside consultant if you'd like another opinion on it. You know, on the part that's adjacent to the terminal building, I don't have the figures in front of me, but I believe that the remediation costs to have Apex come in or a subsidiary come in and just remove all of the damaged materials was around $40,000 plus.
I asked Apex, he doesn't do any of that, he just does
Yeah,
reports.
it may have been someone else that Dean had gotten a report from, I don't recall. And then the roof itself, the replacement, I believe was another 40 to 60. And so, you know, that gives you an idea of the magnitude, and we're talking about a future replacement cost on it. But we can certainly come back with some of those facts and figures, but it was building and code's opinion that it had reached its end of life.
I think we need those facts and figures and more just concrete. This is just not going to work. And once we get that, then I need an estimate for demo, because we need to do something. Sitting around here twiddling our thumbs and worrying about this stuff is not going to get anything done.
Mayor, can I continue?
Yes.
All right. So another policy direction. So again, in 2019, we have a placeholder for a CIP project for the sanitary sewer. That placeholder in 2019 is $240,000. We believe that's about $85,000 to $100,000 higher than the construction cost. It depends on, you know, if we've got the contingencies in there right, et cetera, and we'll be getting a better estimate once our plans are completed. The reason that placeholder is higher, though, is we don't have a restroom to hook it to. So we don't have an ADA compliant restroom that we can connect to the sanitary sewer. And so the options on the sanitary sewer, first, which I I don't believe it's feasible or desirable is to delay the project until we have a new terminal building. To build a park-style restroom, so just a freestanding ADA-compatible restroom, or to go ahead and pursue the construction of a terminal building. So that would be, you know, like a pilot's lounge, meeting room, and restrooms, and so it's really kind of a question of do you want to invest in a standalone restroom out there, or do you want to go ahead and pursue the terminal building portion of the project?
Well, the other restroom, where was it at? Was it in the?
It's in the flight school. So there's a restroom internal to the flight school that's locked, and then there's one that's external that's now closed.
Mike, why couldn't we build a restroom that serves the needs of the airport, and instead of building it for long-term purposes, back to your terminal building and lounge and all that stuff, you know, the bigger picture, why can't we just get us a restroom going so that when they have fly-ins and so forth, and not necessarily tie it in to the laterals, could we just do some sort of holding system and pump it?
So this would be, the existing laterals are failed and can't be rehabbed, and so the 2019 CIP project is to actually build the sanitary sewer. It's the question is, though, is we don't have a restroom out at the airport to hook to the sanitary sewer, and so we're trying to get that all done as one project. And do we want to invest in a standalone restroom facility, or to pursue, you know, building a terminal building that would maybe have a pilot's lounge and restrooms?
Well, you're saying that the restroom facility, if it's done quote-unquote park style, would be basically a tear-down facility.
Well, I would anticipate it being a permanent standalone facility, or it could potentially be a wasted, you tear it down later. But, you know, to me, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to have something investment that you tear down.
It doesn't. So what we're talking about here is whatever we put in there, even if it's quote-unquote park style, we have to think about it as being a permanent fixture, and that would need to have, for example, climate control, which, you know, park style restrooms don't have climate control. But they would have to be used during the winter because we don't have another restroom. You know,
I'm not really in favor of that. We're going to invest in that.
Yeah, but that means you're going to delay the restroom. We need a restroom out there
we need one yesterday, but
from the guys that I've talked to at Monday lunches.
I think we can.
Out there beyond the porta potties that came in for the last fly-in.
I agree.
I mean, I know they supplement it. Even when they had a restroom that worked, they supplemented it. But we've got to get a restroom going.
And the assumption is that we cannot tie into the existing restrooms.
Correct.
Because of the fact they're not ADA compliant.
Correct.
Okay, but they
and because of the fact that the building itself, the condition it's in.
But the building has nothing to do with the restroom.
The restrooms in the building.
I mean, I'm just asking here.
Yeah.
Yeah, the restrooms are in the building.
Yeah, some of the restrooms are in the building. However, and I also understand that if there's improvements to the building, it's going to break the, you know, we're going to have to do everything to ADA. So that's, if you're talking about adding the cost, that's what's adding the cost right there, is the ADA compliance piece. Am I not correct on that? I mean, the roof is not, it's not a deal breaker, but modifying the inside of the building because of ADA requirements is what's going to break us.
Well, in my estimation, we could gut that whole thing, put in the bathroom in there, seal the roof, because there's
Just make it all in one big bathroom.
I mean, if you want to just have a temporary facility, I mean, it would work, and it wouldn't cost a lot, because the companies that spray, it's basically a Line-X coating on a metal roof that seals it completely, and it can be almost a flat roof and not leak anymore, because it seals all the cracks, and seals all the screws and everything else. So that is, you can do that for a limited cost, gut the entire rest of the building, rebuild a whole new bathroom inside, and it can just be a big bathroom. mean, and it's gonna be a lot cheaper than,
Why, maybe you can educate me here, why would we have to rebuild the bathroom? The bathroom exists currently. All we're talking about doing is connecting the bathroom, disconnecting it from its current failed septic system and reconnecting it to a new gravity sewer system. Why would we then have to rebuild the bathrooms?
You know, but I believe because it's not ADA compliant.
but it's also.
But it's
grandfathered.
never been ADA compliant, is my point.
Yeah.
It's never been. Why is it that we would have to then go in and rebuild these bathrooms just because we're going to make them operational again?
Yes, Larry.
You're in my territory now.
Okay.
So quite frankly, the issue is correct in one respect. It is simple in the fact that the current restrooms don't meet ADA. To bring them to ADA standards depends on what you decide to do kind of with the building, but the outside restroom, the one that the public has access to 24/7, has a step up. You'd have to ramp it, you'd have to do some other things, and it's too small. So you've got to take all the walls down just to get it big enough to meet ADA. So basically, you're going to rebuild them, both inside and outside, in order to get them big. They need to be a minimum of 5 by 5 feet.
But what's compelling?
And they're not that size.
Yeah, I guess what I don't understand
What's
is.
the trigger?
Yeah, what is
The
compelling
improvement,
us at this
the
moment?
improvement to the building.
Let's say
the-
we connect these up
when-
now, all of a sudden now we got to get ADA compliant.
Yeah, the ADA compliant issue is the same for us as it is for private business. Once you start touching something that's not compliant with ADA standards, in order to improve it or bring it up to some kind of quality control standard, you're automatically required
Yeah.
by ADA law to make it ADA
But
accessible.
we're not talking about doing anything at all with the bathroom. We're talking about connecting the sewer system, which is external to the bathroom.
It's a fine point, we can check on it for you, but I think they're gonna tell us.
I think it's
you
worth
need
it.
to
I mean,
improve
because
it.
we're talking about having to renovate, a bathroom in a building that's probably going to be
I
dimmer.
agree.
Versus just connecting
A line.
a line that's coming out of that bathroom.
Taking off a
right?
lateral and putting on a sanitary sewer.
Yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't seem like it makes much sense to me that we
Yeah.
would then have to,
The-
because we connect this pipe out 3 feet outside the building, now we got to go inside the building and completely revamp that.
Yeah, it
Bathroom.
gets a little screwy, but that's what we'll check on for you.
Okay.
Okay.
So what's the cost of the park-style restroom?
So, you know, we've assumed that $85,000 to $100,000. You know, again, this is a CIP placeholder, and so it's a placeholder. It's a very rough estimate, and you know, would be subject to looking at it and getting
Couldn't
the
we
exact
try
cost.
to get a temporary structure? I know like they have, they're quasi-temporary, I guess, where it's basically almost shipping container size, and it's got 4 doors on it. I see them a lot of places, and they hook them into sanitary.
So, you know,
That way, if we do 3 years later, come in with a terminal building.
So I think that's an option. I think it's also an option to do a modular temporary terminal. And so if you wanted us to come back with those options when we
I'd
come
love to
back
see
with the
those.
sewer, we can certainly do
The
that.
more options, the better.
And would that dump into the sanitary lateral, Michael, or would that dump into a holding tank and be
That
pumped?
that would dump into the new sanitary sewer line project. Yes.
Do we have estimates on a new terminal building?
Yeah. Moving right along. So
Way to go, Todd.
So included in the 2023, or actually, I'm sorry, in the 2018-19, 2020 budget, we do have a placeholder CIP project for the terminal building and a new FBO maintenance hangar. And so the reason it's out there in 2023 is based on our current financing and our capabilities to fund the project. So the price that's in the CIP for that project, and based on some of the stuff that we found out after the fire inspections, I think this 2023 number is a little low. for the maintenance hangar portion, but we have $499,500, so just shy of $500,000. And so that would be some sort of new terminal building, a new maintenance hangar. I think and the cost split about 50-50 between those two. But since we did the CIP projects, I think the maintenance hangar is actually a little bit higher cost than that, based on what the folks like to do in the building and some of the fire suppression stuff that the fire department would likely require. The part that's in the CIP is kind of more of a basic hangar, a basic 50 by 50 or 60 by 60 hangar, and not including, some of the things to make it fire compliant.
Or a restaurant or anything like that.
And so, no inclusion for a restaurant or anything like that. It's just it's a placeholder out there to help us make decisions as we move forward. And again, we've touched on it. What kind of willingness or desire does council have to continue to subsidize? So the existing tenant out there, based on their current rent, is not going to come anywhere near paying a replacement cost on that hangar or paying for improvements to the hangar. Are you kind of, what's your gut feel on, are you willing to subsidize?
Are you talking about the VAA?
No, I'm talking about Brent Bidekoffer, the existing maintenance mechanic that rents the maintenance building out there. The VAA is totally separate. Yeah. And so, right now, their rent's pretty minimal. They like it there. Brent doesn't want to see it increased. He wants to be safe. He wants to be operating at the airport.
What is his rent currently?
I believe it's in the mid 500s a month.
So couldn't we offer to let him lease a spot and build a new hangar and charge him a small amount a month, just like we do the VAA, and let him have his own facility?
I don't think he's interested in building it.
I think that that's the question I'm asking is, are you willing to subsidize his rent to build a new hangar that's compliant?
Any and all options out there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can bring me 20, I'd look at all of them. I'm just telling you, I'd like to see private partnerships where we go out and say, would you be willing to do X? What do we need to do to make it happen?
Besides a restaurant, what other revenue generating, I'm not that familiar with it, so.
Right.
For private partnership, what
So
do they have to gain?
Lee has a great example. I mean, he was at Oshkosh last week, and there is, that whole thing is a revenue generator for that whole town.
650 some odd thousand people descend on that place every year for 8 days.
And Oshkosh is incredible. We're comparing apples and oranges, aren't we?
No,
We've
that
got
town is-
P-51 Mustangs in the air and all kinds of fun
That's
stuff.
no. Oshkosh started out little, really small, and it's gotten this large over decades,
20 years.
Many years.
many years. It's been
Yeah.
several decades.
And we're kind of in a good position because we're the only town I know of in the entire region that has 2 airports.
Yeah.
That's our size. We've got IXD, obviously, New Century, and then we've got the municipal. But my question, you wanted to ask about, so fuel sales is a huge revenue generator for a lot of the airports that are out there. If you have good fuel, good pumps, and reliable pumps, and good prices, you'll get a lot of money. Another one is just things like courtesy cars and things like that generate more revenue coming into the city. Get into a courtesy car, you go down to Blazers, you go to Dairy Queen, other places, and spend money in the town.
My point was that there's currently 66,000 people who live in Oshkosh, and that is, for a small area that it is, I mean, that is a huge event that draws in, I mean, they go tenfold on their population.
Oh, yeah.
So if we do something and we go tenfold in our population for 7 or 8 days because we're using the airport as that could be huge financially. And there's a couple of air shows around here, but there's they're all big airships, you know, and they don't always have one down at KCI because it's too small.
They use Wheeler
Right.
a lot of times.
Yeah, and
Well, there are other examples like Tarkio, Missouri. I bet nobody knows where that is, but I bet those two guys back there know where it is.
Right.
That's a podunk little town in Missouri that, I don't know how many, you know, if it's 100 or more biplanes from all over the U.S. fly in there every year.
You can be on the festival in the air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess my question though was,
Things like that are on the table, but also this, we could get a good FBO in there to run the gas pumps for us.
flight school, drop zone.
Flight school, we could do drop zone for.
Yep.
So that was my question. Where does the private make their money?
Right. They
What is
make
their
it on
motivation?
people actually showing up to the airport.
Yeah.
That's and flushing the toilet. Right.
Yes.
From my perspective, as far as, you know, revenue generating operations at airports, especially smaller airports, small aircraft maintenance, fuel sales, occasionally a restaurant. Hutchison, where I came from, has a really nice revenue generating. You know, to put in perspective though, our airport, I would consider it at this time a hobby aircraft airport. Most of the hangars out there are vintage aircraft. They're personal aircraft, not necessarily for business. I'm sure there's a few. And so, you know, in the past model, I think prior to coming to the city, you know, they operated to, you know, to support what they like to do, which is store their planes and have fun, there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. But again, revenue generators are maintenance, they're industry, so installing, upgrading airplanes, testing aircraft stuff, etc. I think then you start getting into the New Centuries and the like, and you know, New Century generates, I believe, if I remember right, $160 million a year or something like that. Our airport's around 600,000 based on KDOT studies. We're one of the smallest airports in the state based on the potential for revenue. You know, and when we talk about the flight school, the other buildings, the rental, etc., since the flight school tenant in 2017 vacated in early 2017, citing that they weren't able to procure an airplane, and so therefore it becomes pretty hard to give flight lessons. So since they vacated, I've been contacted once by someone wanting to start a flight school, supposedly, when I told them there were multiple issues with the building that needed to be resolved before we could rent it. I never heard from them again. That was in August of 2017. And then I have been contacted by the VAA to rent space for storage. Again, according to our building and codes department, they'd prefer we not rent it to anyone for any purpose, because once we've rented it, we can no longer control ingress and egress, etc. And then the maintenance hangar folks. So the Bidikoffers had asked about additional storage space previously, and we had told them, no, we're not interested in doing that. And those are not based strictly on my decision or on Larry's decision. They're also a direction from our insurers and their perspective. So I think that on the terminal building and the FBA maintenance hangar, I think that this is an issue that we should, you know, as we move forward, keep in mind how much do we want to subsidize it. And I'm going to grab a drink real quick so that I can keep talking, and I'll be right back. Sorry.
It's fine. So, we're talking about construction, operation, and maintenance. Is this something that public-private partnership could accomplish?
I go back to my roadmap, get our house clean first, and then we can talk about the 3P
All
stuff.
right. Well, this is a question that was asked for council policy direction, so I wanted to throw some.
I'd say no for right now and understand what that roadmap looks like.
Okay,
And
so-
prioritize stuff.
Then we say.
I'm talking 2023.
That's correct.
Sort of, but we also have to figure out where we're gonna put a bathroom and
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think there's other
it's all
priorities
tied
that
together though.
Mm-hmm.
they're tied, but I think there's an order to it.
Well, I'm saying if there are people that are interested in a private partnership,
I'd love to meet them.
I would be happy to hear
I think
that.
it's easy to talk
But if they're not, are we ready to?
It's going to be hard for anybody to show any interest, and I think Michael even alluded to, very little interest. It's going to be really hard going forward if people outside of this town don't see us actually doing anything with the property. If we let it continue to deteriorate, nobody's ever going to be interested. So we've got to, we got to figure out, to Councilman Gorsuch's point, we got to figure out what the priority is, and then start tackling these things one at a time, and demonstrate commitment to keeping this thing going and keeping it open. And once we do that, then they'll come.
That'll create some momentum, I believe.
Yeah.
In the interest of expediency, I think we've worked this now for about an hour and 15 minutes. Is your presentation?
We're almost
complete?
done.
Okay, let's go ahead and continue then.
So again, I think that as we get closer to, to out years, as we gather more data, looking at how much do we want to subsidize, or what's the policy of subsidizing the airport. Next steps. Staff will continue to address the fire inspections and related issues. So that would include, continuing to update the minimum standards, working with the FAA, the fire inspection folks. Our consultant, again, is working on completing the sanitary sewer design. That's hopefully nearing completion. And then they're working on updating our airport layout plan. So our airport layout plan, again, we had a draft completed in 2017. With the FAA, though, that was put on hold pending the EAA airport layout plan being addressed. And so now we can go back and complete our airport layout plan. And then again, reviewing the sublease policy and related issues. Next steps, based on council decision, we are continuing to pursue the construction of the sanitary sewer. Our plans are complete, or will be complete in the near future, and we'll bring back options regarding what to connect to that sewer. And I believe that that's it.
I have one last question, and it just occurred to me, Michael. So over the last 10 years, the FAA has been subsidizing $5 to $8 million?
No, so in total, probably.
In total over
yeah.
all of those years?
So it's $150,000, give or take, a year.
So do we see a trend that the government is pulling back those subsidies? No?
No, so it's been pretty steady, and
The reason why I ask
for
is
the near
if
future.
the city and those elected, and we all have consensus, planning to invest $500,000 to $1 million plus, or minus. I just want to make sure that we're not going to be on the hook for more money down the road based on a reduction in FAA grants and subsidies.
It's always a potential,
Okay.
and the FAA won't make any long-term promises.
No, I understand.
But the
trend tells
particular
us-
funding, it's my understanding that this particular funding has always been there and probably
Okay.
more than likely it will be.
Yeah. And given the
And-
national policy directives that have come from FAA administrator as well as the Trump administration, it doesn't look like they're going to be closing that spigot anytime soon.
Nothing's getting cut.
Nope.
Can I just add a little more flavor to that? Because we need to be clear about this, the FAA monies, the type of stuff we're talking about in terms of terminal buildings,
Yeah.
hangars, that none of that is eligible for FAA.
Correct.
Correct.
And, you know, I also have an insight from the litigation that we defended that the FAA, you know, enacts changes to different airspace requirements, things like that, and they expect the sponsor, the airport sponsor, to comply with that, whether or not there are FAA funds to affect those changes or not. And so when Michael's talking about, you know, $8 million prospectively in the future in terms of additional changes that are needed, some of that is the result of new FAA regulations, which by them simply enacting new regulations, they've put every airport sponsor out in the country on the hook for that much more money.
Yeah, that's why I was bringing it up.
Without
Yeah.
a revenue source.
Right, because I understand that those are two different revenue buckets, if you will. The revenue bucket we're talking about is for operations and facilities. The revenue bucket that the FAA brings is for
Runway
landing
protection.
strips and those types of things. I get those,
Yeah.
they're segregated.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go on.
I was just saying that, you know, that's kind of what caused some of the problems that we had in some litigation, is the changing regulations and the lack of funds to effectuate those changes.
Okay, well, thanks, Michael, for being gracious in the hot seat.
Now you know what Laura feels like.
So, Mayor, just,
Yes.
Mayor, for clarity, I want to make sure that we know kind of the direction that council is wanting the staff to go in. What I think I heard is that we need to kind of have a work session specific to the airport to
Yes.
kind of look at what our long-term, mid-term, short-term goals might be for the airport. And as part of that, we can kind of look at some of those successful airports that Councilman Moore brought up of exactly what do we see this airport being in the next 5, 10, 20 years, so that we can look at kind of land area, list of those items that need to be covered, the cost of those items, and allow you to make some priorities in terms of recommendations
And
for the
yeah.
for the staff. And then as part of that, before that work session, I think I'm hearing that we'd like a third-party report for the building, so that when we have that work session, we can talk about that.
Correct.
As well.
And more to Councilman Gorsuch's plan as well, we'd like to be able to look at some other opportunities as to how to enhance revenues, a roadmap, if you will, to see if we can incorporate some of those and see if we can broaden the base of revenues at the airport as well. So there's multiple angles here that have to be looked
I
at.
just really think we need to make sure we're including our
And make sure that it's coming from the
patriots out there.
the airport advisory board as well as the VAA, because they have a vested interest in this as much as anybody else.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks a lot. All right. Public comments. Move on to public comments. Members of the public are welcome to use this time to make comments about city matters or items on the agenda that are not part of a public hearing. We are going to limit comments to 5 minutes, and we just ask that you have no personal attacks or profanity, and just come up here and state your name and address for the record. Come up here, state your name and address for the record, and be heard.
Hi, my name's Kevin Pratt. I'm from 7326 Earnshaw in Shawnee. I'm a member of the VAA, just so everybody knows. The only thing I wanted to say is the VAA still stands willing to lease the flight school for some reasonable amount on a month-to-month basis. And I'm a roofing contractor. Excuse me. And I heard the number 40,000 flipped around for the roof on the flight school. Please hire me. That's a ridiculously high amount. And if some of those numbers are being applied to some of the other costs there, I mean, remember, people, it's a pole barn. It's just like a hangar. There's not much to that building. You could remodel that whole building for $25,000. Look at the report that the mold people did. They tell you exactly, line for line, what to do. What rooms need what. Do what they said. It won't cost anywhere near what you're thinking it will. That's all I've got to say.
Thanks, Ken. Anyone else? No one coming forward. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there any member of the council wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Moore, second Melton, that we approve the consent agenda as written. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Consent agenda passes. Yes. Yes, I'm here. All right, there are no committee recommendations. There is no old business. Yes. Are you? Oh, I'm hearing echo. Now I'm hearing echo. Okay. No committee recommendations, no old business. New business, item number 1. Consider adopting an ordinance, adopting the fiscal year 2019 budget with conditional approval for fiscal year 2020. Laura Gorley, you are at the finish line. Good evening.
Good evening. Thought you were going to say I was at the hot seat and I was going to sit back down.
Oh, no.
Okay, well, it's been 7 weeks since the city administrator gave you your first proposed budget, and you made some tweaks on the in-between. On July 16th, we had what was the final presentation, and then you had the statutorily required budget hearing, and there were no comments at the budget hearing. So with no further direction from the governing body, there have been no further tweaks. We stand exactly where we were on July 16th. Asking for your approval of the budget, which is structurally sound with adequate reserves in both the tax levy funds and the utility funds, future-oriented, including bolstered funding for the development partners, and visionary innovation initiatives for tourism, marketing, and entrepreneurism, providing for the continued service excellence and infrastructure needs for our residents and businesses while preparing for long-term growth. And it's fiscally responsible and sustainable, preserving future funding capacity through a minimal incremental mill levy increase of 0.196, which is within the allowance of the tax lid exemptions per state legislation. The estimated impact to an average home of $220,000 is $4.96 annually, or 41 cents a month with that little increase. So with that, as you know, you did a biennial budget. Tonight, you can only do 1 year by state law. So what you're doing is giving an ordinance that says yes for 2019, conditional approval of 2020.
Okay. Thank you,
Unless
Laura.
you say no. I guess the ordinance says you say yes, so you would have to approve the ordinance.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Laura. I'm going to open the floor for public comment on new business item number 1. If anyone wishes to make comments, step forward. That's what I like. Me too. With no one coming forward, any questions for Finance Director Gorley? Mark, do you have anything for us? He might have put himself on mute. Okay, with no comments being logged, we will...
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you, Mark. We'll move on to a vote on a motion on new business.
So moved.
Second. Motion Gregorczyk, second Winters, that we approve ordinance number 2585, adopting the fiscal year 2019 budget with conditional approval for fiscal year 2020. City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilman Gregorczyk?
Yes.
Councilman Melton?
Yes.
Councilman Moore?
Yes.
Councilman Winters?
Yes.
Councilman Baldwin?
Yes.
Ordinance number 2585 passes.
To be done so soon, I don't understand.
And, yes, absolutely.
Maternity too?
Yes, sir.
And we're 20, let the record show we are 24 days early
Right.
on this. So Good work, finance staff, good work, members of
Everybody.
the city departments, good work, City Administrator Harrison Lee. I appreciate your hard labor on this, so thank you.
Way to go, Laura.
Yep. We are going to council updates. It's a very light agenda, as I said. Council updates, we'll start with City Attorney Ryan Denk.
Nothing for me.
Nothing for you. Hey, I gotta change
He
it up.
hasn't been here in a while, you gotta
I
give him
don't
a break.
know. Finance Director Gorley, you're over there doing your happy dance. All right. City Clerk.
No, sir.
I will mention something on that, instead of the City Clerk, though, make sure you get your recommendations in for boards and commissions. Committees, advisory committees.
Actually, sir, I'll be sending you and the entire governing body an update because we are about to have terms expire on the Streets,
Yep.
Stormwater, and Sidewalks Committee, meaning we will have additional open terms
Yeah.
and terms on the ADA. So I will be sending you one application that we received, but we will have additional openings that will need to be
Okay.
filled as well.
Yeah.
So this would be the time to merge those two. Just saying.
If that's council's direction, then.
I can't get anybody to come in. It's killing me, man.
Well, I know there's a lot of folks that are moving into this community that would like to have some involvement in it, so.
Just need to contact them.
I've made it very clear that all they would need to do is send us one of us an email. Okay. Chief Prudy. Nothing. All right. Public Works, Michael Kramer. Anything else? All right. Larry Powell.
Yes, sir, I have a couple of items. We have recently received the Price Chopper application for their project. This is something that's been kind of rolling around in the city for 2 or 3 years. They currently have made an application to build a new store located mostly behind the existing Quick Trip location. So if people are not familiar with that, the vacant lot that's behind QT and at the west end of the existing Moonlight Plaza Shopping Center would be the location for this. This is planned currently to be a 67,000 square foot store, which is larger than the existing facility. This is also planned to be based on recommendations from AWG, which is their supplier, who's actually partnering with them to help build the facility. They will maintain ownership of their existing store. It'll be a turnkey. In other words, they'll build a store, stock it, get it ready, turn the switch on, and then they'll close the other store. So at that point in time, then they have plans to remodel, rehabilitate the existing store for additional uses that have yet to be determined. But along with that, we're expecting them to talk to us about incentives, which will be brought back to this council at a later date. We're still in the process of looking at those, and they're still actually in the process of pulling their performance material and items together. So they're not quite ready to come to the council with a full presentation, but that'll be fairly quickly in the next 30 days or so, we expect, barring any issues that they have in preparing those. So good news for the community. It's something that we've met with them a couple of times now, and actually we've met with them many times at the last on plan reviews for the last 4 weeks. So
That's great.
we're getting close to where they're going to finalize the project. In addition to that, we've had, pardon me, we're sharing coughs or something over here. In addition to that, of course, the hotel project is finally moving along. They've got the all that scaffolding that you see is for the stucco work. That's finally moving fairly quickly. They did have a change in the leadership in the on-site general manager. They have a new on-site manager, and we've been working with Tommy for about the last 3 weeks to pick up on some items internally that we still had some issues with. And we've had to go back to their design consultant and have them look at a fire specialist consultant to solve some of these issues. And that's finally bearing some fruit, and those things are being taken care of at a much more rapid pace now than what we were getting. They were having some they were having some issues with what we call penetrations, where things go through from one area of the building to another, and those have to be basically fire stopped, and that wasn't getting accomplished correctly. And so we had to stop the work temporarily while we called in a fire specialist to go over those issues with them and come up with a corrective program, much like you talked about earlier for the airport, that was laid out floor by floor by floor to take care of all these issues. And now they're moving forward fairly rapidly now to take care of those issues. So they're slightly behind on their total schedule, but not very far that they can't, now that the building's pretty much sealed up, they can move fairly quickly. Parking lot's basically done. They've got one final coat to do. Landscaping, of course, won't be done until later. And Cedar Niles has been repaved and partially restriped, and as part of that process, you're going to see additional work done out there with signalization in the future. So that's something the city's working on. So that pretty much takes you up to speed on that. We've got,
Larry, real quick, are we still looking at a November timeframe for them to open?
at this point in time, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, we're on schedule for opening this fall like they originally looked at, October, November. Yeah. So the other thing I'd like to bring up is Councilman Baldwin has asked me to spend some time in the future with him just to talk about general economic development activities and building permit activities and so forth. And an item's kind of come to our attention in the last couple of weeks that when we do inspections, we have 3 inspectors now, and they're all trained to do inspections basically 99.9% of the time identical. We don't want them coming in, following each other and saying, this is different than this guy as far as something that they see wrong. So we've gotten very good about that, and our new inspectors is up and being trained very well. But one of the things that we've heard some our developers and from some of our other people is that they're not quite sure what the job of our inspectors are. And so sometimes if we haven't heard from a job for a while and we think they're getting ready to be in a final or whatever place they're at for their next inspection, we'll stop by voluntarily and just make a stop in and look things over. And if we see things at that point in time that need to be caught up or that we think maybe they don't realize are not quite right according to their building plans, because that's what we're checking their construction against, is their building plans, is we try and bring those to their attention. And in some cases we've had some developers that feel like maybe the inspectors were just dropping in to cause a little bit of havoc, and that is not their intent. That is not their purpose and not their intent. They're there to help protect the general public. It's a life, health, safety code issue. And so the things that we're talking about are the things that we are required to bring to their attention. Things that are color schemes or have to do with construction materials usage and so forth, those are part and parcel of a different program. And they may or may not have any kind of germane usage level, except where it comes to life, health, safety code. But when it comes to life, health, safety code, if the guy sees something wrong, they want to point it out as soon as possible, because it doesn't do any good to let it go to the end and then they miss an opening date, or worse, they've got to order something special to, fix a problem that could have been fixed very simple or very back at the beginning. So their main purpose is that particular item as they go through their inspections. And then as far as proposing solutions, we do that sometimes, especially out in the residential area, because those guys that are in the building areas of residential homes, they've done it for so long that they don't use architects and planners and design criteria. But people that are building commercial buildings, we require them to do that. And so when something is wrong, if it's wrong on the plans, we find it wrong in the field, what we suggest they do is that they go back and talk to their design specialists, because those guys have access to a whole lot more solutions than we do. Plus, not only that, if we suggest a solution and they decide to use it and then something happens later, the city's a little bit on the hook for a liability issue, because it's our solution, not their solution. So we will offer solutions, 3 or 4 of them that we almost always end the conversation with. Please go check with your architect, your design consultant, because those are the guys that need to give you the answer you need to do. They have more solutions available to them, just like the hotel. When we got the fire specialist in, those guys came in and they said, oh, well, you can do this and this and this. Well, some of those solutions are their area of expertise, and we don't know that, and they can bring those solutions to us, and then we get a letter from them that says this is done correct, and we're done, and it's an approved project. So I just wanted to bring that up real quickly because I do know that it's been an area of concern over a couple of conversations in the last couple of months, and I just felt like we needed to kind of clarify what the inspector's purpose is and what they're doing and those kinds of things.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Larry. And going back to the project with Price Chopper, I wanted to, I saw Greg Martinez over in the back there with South of Johnson County EDC. He worked hard on this with the city to get that done, and wanted to commend Mr. Martinez for his efforts, and thank you again. So I wanted to take an opportunity since he was sitting here in the audience. Jason Bruce, Parks and Rec.
Yeah, just wanted to remind everyone that this Saturday is our Gardner Grind out at Celebration Park. Staff's busy this week getting obstacles ready to go. As of today, we have over 310 participants signed up, still accepting registration.
Great, thanks. Utilities, Gons Garcia.
I have a few items, and I'd like to share with you the latest water effluent demand. So I'll go to the podium so I can share the graph with you. On the graph you've seen on your screens, that's the 14-day trend since we implemented the water restrictions. The blue line is your water effluent or the water demand. The gray line is the temperature. The solid red line is the max capacity of Hillsdale Water Treatment Facility. And the orange line is the rainfall. If you will see, starting from July 20th to the present, we've seen a significant decrease in water demand. And is a result of the restriction we put in place back in 7/16 and 7/20. Now, it looks pretty good. I think we're managing, we're able to keep up with the demand. Actually, we're about 500,000 less than the previous 2 weeks. So everything looks pretty good. However, the 10-day forecast for temperature, this came from the Weather Underground website. We're expecting temperatures to be in the high 90s, low 80s for the next 10 days. If you remember the previous graph, usually when we have temperatures over 90 degrees, the water demand goes up. So I'm expecting that the water should remain the same, but at this point, I would like to go an additional 7 days, see how the temperatures, the temperature for the next few days before make any decisions on lifting water restrictions.
Okay. We have consensus on the dais to allow for another week? Obviously, if we're going to have a vote on lifting the water warning, we would not have that for 2 weeks. So we would just be giving staff the flexibility. I'm assuming that the next Friday minimum, not this week, but the following week.
Yes, sir.
Would be the one we would have that information, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Did we go ahead and lift the bulk water?
That was lifted last week.
Yes. I was advised on it, and I gave a directive to staff to do.
And the average usage for the past week is being less than 5,000 gallons a day. So we're in pretty good shape. Then the second item I'd like to give you an update is on the water rate study. The rate subcommittee met last week, and we should be able to make the final recommendations to the UAC early next month, and then to the city council. Hopefully second week in September.
Thanks, guys.
And one more,
Yes.
related to the Justice Center. The new Justice Center doesn't have an allowance for the cost of equipment and material for the electric service extension. So the transformer, cables, cabinets, cable terminations, materials, we're talking about $26,382. So I'd like to get a direction if that's something you want for us to move and purchase from the electric fund. Because right now, right now, I'm on hold. I don't know what to do.
I think that's what, I'll also look for Mark Baldwin's input on this, but,
Let Mark go first.
yeah. Mark, you there?
There's a lot of natural light in that building.
No, you could rely on that. We might have lost Mark.
You guys all have flashlights, don't you?
It's not possible to tell from here, so.
Okay, well,
Mark?
The case whether he's on or not, so.
Yeah. So, personally, I don't necessarily see an issue with that. I mean, it's electric development, is it not? It's directly, and it's basically, we're talking about, pulling money out of one pocket. I mean, is there gonna be an issue with that around this dais?
Not personally.
I guess not.
No.
I mean, we're using it for electric, for an elected, for our Justice Center. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think that's gonna be
What
unnecessary.
what was the amount again?
26,382 and 0.38 cents.
Yeah. All right, well, knowing that we don't have Mark on the call right now, it looks like it anyway. I think we can move forward with that consensus.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, just for clarification, Mayor, because that exceeds the administrator's authority, normally those items would come to council for a vote, so we would need a motion to approve that expenditure.
We would
And
need a
with a
motion
vote.
now to approve it. Okay.
I'd
Yes.
make a motion to approve 26,000 for the electric,
27,000.
is it
26,382
$382
and 38 cents.
and 38 cents to purchase the hardware
Equipment and
and
materials.
equipment and materials for the Gardner Justice Center.
Second.
Motion, Gregorczyk, second, Moore, that we authorize the utilities director to fund aforementioned improvements to electrical infrastructure to the Gardner Justice Center for the aforementioned amount that was cited by the person who made the motion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes, so you can
That's all I have. Thank you.
take those.
Amy, we can try Mark back.
Yeah.
He said he might be able to get a call again.
Well. Okay, I believe we have everybody except the city administrator. City administrator.
Yes, I have a few things.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Yes.
Okay, so first I'd like to mention that the I-35 Gardner Road Subcommittee had its kickoff meeting this past week, and we had an opportunity to provide an overview of the work that staff's completed to date on that project, as well as the upcoming economic development opportunities, which would serve as the return on investment for the road projects. Also, this week is the Employee Appreciation Week for our staff, so the Employee Engagement Committee of Directors have been working on activities, and today we started that week with the Breakfast for Our Employees, which was very well received. Also, just as a reminder, on the 13th, you all indicated at the last meeting that you were available for a work session to talk about Wired City, and so you will be getting the agenda for that upcoming work session. And finally, we are on the home stretch with the Sustainable Places committee that I serve on through Mark. This week we'll be meeting to make our final recommendations on projects, and we look very, it looks very favorable for the city to be able to get some additional funding for the completion or additional work for the Main Street corridor.
Yeah, just as a reminder for those watching on YouTube, Cheryl, where did our grant application score?
It was the highest.
Okay.
Yes.
Make sure we knew about that.
Yes, we did well.
Yeah. Kudos to Jen Jordan, who's our
Kudos
grant
to all the
coordinator,
staff,
and the staff
as well
members.
as the
Yep.
staff in business and economic development that helps write that. So
Yep.
we have them covered three ways. We sit on the committee, we've got great planning and development staff, and we've got a great grant writer.
Okay, great.
That's it.
Thanks, Cheryl. All right, we have 2 executive sessions, and I believe that the first
Do we wanna do,
executive session, yes.
Our council updates?
Oh, I forgot about the good.
Yeah.
Thank
You're
you
not
for
forgetting.
keeping me
Don't-
straight. Thank you for
We are
keeping me
not
straight.
missing that
Rich.
tonight, Mr. Mayor.
All right. So council updates from council to staff. We'll start with the council vice president.
Thank you. All right, so real quick, what is the current water situation at the pool? I mean, is it still leaking? I'm really, I don't know what's going on there. Hey, Mark, I'm asking about the pool and the leak.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Sorry, Jason.
So we do have our outside group coming in tomorrow. We did find a couple leaks in our hydrostatic valves a couple weeks ago. Replaced all 7 of those. They are coming back tomorrow to look at return lines, 2 back to our filter system with a camera. So we are still losing water. Hopefully, you can find that it's a time-consuming process, and trying to find a company to come in, go through these. We did our own in-house shut-offs, returns, valves, things like that. So hopefully have more information this Friday midnight.
And we're still, what is the volume we, hypothetically, did we losing a day there?
Right now, we're running about average of 30,000 gallons a day. An average year is about 15.
Right.
So
Somebody's basement's got to have water, that's all.
So 30,000 gallons, but have we seen any mitigation in that since we replaced the seven return?
I don't have that information tonight.
Okay.
Can I ask one question on that?
Yeah.
How much do we normally go through at the pool? What's the normal usage that can be
Like in a
expected?
year,
Yeah, well, I guess in a day. What's the daily usage typically?
15,000
15,000.
And that's evaporation plus leakage.
in carry out.
Carry out, yeah.
So the reason I bring that up is because when we're talking about water restrictions and we're going through
Right.
this again, we probably ought to take that into consideration, because that pool wasn't there using that much water way back when we were saying.
2003.
Yeah, when we were saying turn off the bulk water, we thought that was the biggest consumption. So we may want to reconsider the bulk water thing in light of the fact that.
Because that's 45,000 gallons a day.
Well,
If we're losing 30 and we got 15 on carry out and evaporation.
Yeah.
It includes that, okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. That was, okay, thank you.
So usually, we're usually 15K a day. We're telling these guys that want to come and get 5,000 a week that they can't, because we're under water restrictions. That's my point, so.
Yeah, understood and noted. Rich, you have any more?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So I firmly believe, we've talked about this a couple times, but we as a body need to sit down, or either have staff or somebody go over the rules of the governing body. There are lots of things that we need to clarify and stipulate, like, well, I think there was even a, like, when is a quorum, who's there, who's voting when, whatever. All those things we need to sit down and spell out so that the next body doesn't have an issue. There's a lot of stuff that's out of date, so I would say that, and as a body, do we want staff to start going through that, or do we want to have work sessions on it?
We're talking about Charter Ordinance 26, just to be clear,
Right, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that needs to be cleaned up with our,
Well,
So,
I would say staff first,
okay.
get it narrowed down, and then we can.
That, everybody agree on, is that
That's one of those things that we had originally said we were going to have a work session on, but other things took precedence, obviously.
right, but
So-
I want to make sure we get it on the radar to get it resolved, because just for me, it's getting kicked down the road again.
Cheryl, is there a possibility that we could have staff come up with some, basically some summarizations of some areas of contention and have that ready by end of September?
Yes, we can look at some of the areas that we think are problematic. And I would ask also if you, like you've got a list, if you all could send that to us as
Yep.
well. And we'll incorporate it, but we certainly can start on it.
Right.
Okay, great, thank you.
So, electric fund. I know we've talked about it before. What is our plan on either somehow shrinking that fund down and giving some of that money back to the citizens? We've talked about it a couple times, and
Well, it's continued to go up.
I know, that's the problem.
And so I guess the question is, this has to go through UAC.
Right.
Right.
Well,
So, I mean, regardless of what happens, it's got to come as a recommendation from the Utility Advisory Committee. I think Gons can speak more on that, because I think we just completed our rate studies for electric, didn't we not?
I'm shooting to have a final recommendation to the UAC next meeting in September.
great. I want to follow up. I just want to, because we hadn't talked about it in a while, I just want to make sure it's still out there. So,
Yep.
I know that I have been lax on driving some of this stuff, so I kind of sat down and I have some things that I'd like to discuss. I know Lee and I talked about it today, and there are things that I think I have failed on following up on, and I'm not going to single anybody out but me, and I want to rectify that. So one of the things that I ran on 3 years ago was getting across the highway. I think I have failed to follow up on that, so I would, like, for me, I think that I did a top 5 list, and I had leaded, we kind of wrote down what we were talking about, but I know our 1 and 2 things, getting across the highway was my number 1, and his was, of course, the I-35, and Gardner Road, that was my number 2, because we've already done quite a bit on that, but I'd like to see once a week, governing body members and staff reaching out and either going to or inviting property owners that are across the highway and going and having meetings with them and saying, we want to do what do we need to do to get you to annex into the city? What is it going to take to make this happen? Because I think it's going to take governing body members to show people that we are serious and we want to get this done. And I think that that's going to expedite the process, because from what I'm seeing, we're not really doing much.
I'll dispute you on that.
Okay,
Rich.
well, I'm saying from what I'm seeing.
Exactly.
Because I haven't
think
been involved in the
There's a lot of
process.
stuff that's going on that
Right.
is behind the scenes, and has to be behind the scenes, because a lot of it has to do with land negotiation.
Right.
Okay,
So,
most of the folks that I'm talking to over on that side of the highway want to see 2 things. They want to see a buyer, and they want to see a use.
right.
All right? We've shown them the service plan. The service plan is out there, it's published. They know that it exists. Okay? What they're looking for is a buyer, and they want to look
So,
for,
do
a
we
developer.
have a problem with having meetings with those folks?
I don't have a problem at all meeting with those folks.
Great.
I've actually met with quite a few of them.
I'd like to see the rest of us doing it too, to show them that we're serious about this and we want to get this done.
Well,
Because that may help sway somebody if they see it from the entire body.
Well, I mean, I know that we have had, Larry, you've had some discussions with folks out there when we were developing the sub-area plans. And we've had, one of the biggest problems we've had is getting them all in the same room.
Hold on one second. My
Yeah.
point specifically was governing body members
I
who
know.
want to volunteer. And I'm telling you, but you telling me what Larry already did doesn't,
No, because I want Larry to weigh in on this.
I understand.
Because he's,
You're missing the point. I already know that Larry has this relationship. My point is, I'd like to see governing body members involved in that. I'd like to try to get this going, like yesterday. Because this is 3 years I've been up here,
all right?
and as far as I know, we're still not over there. So I'd like to try to do whatever we can to make it happen.
All right, then find a buyer and find a developer, Rich. I mean, that's really what they're looking for. I mean, if you want
Steve,
to say, I mean,
Mayor,
yes,
sorry.
yes. Yes.
Can we have meetings with these folks once a week? Start offering it up. I'll attend whenever. Because I want to hear from them is my point. I'd like to hear from them. I'd like the other members of the governing body to hear from them. I'd like to hear from us.
Okay.
So can we do that? Is there a consensus on the body to have that done?
I don't mind that. I don't know if we should individually go out there and
No, I mean with staff.
oh, sorry. Yeah, no, with staff, yeah.
Right. That's my thing, is I'd like us to go out with staff and just, you know, meet and greet, shake hands, say, hey, we're ready. What do you need to get done? What do you need? What is it going to take?
So I see their time as valuable. How are we going to coordinate this? How am I going to know that Randy, Todd, and Rich are talking to landowner XYZ
Staff's going to have to set
at the
that.
same time? Okay.
Right. That's why they're going to be the key. And it's going to be, hey, we've got some meetings scheduled. Who wants to go to these?
And what do we have to offer besides policy?
I just would like to meet them and let them know that we are, this is, as a body,
It's called the charm offensive.
yeah, we are ready to do whatever they need to do. So they tell us what they want, right? And so we can sit there and listen to them and say, look, I need to bring this information back to the rest of the body. So we can just, if nothing else, it's just another hand going, hey, I'm here to help. I want to know what your concerns are and what's going on. It can't hurt because everybody else started to talk to them, so, right?
We've got to be a little careful about this. There's some certain subject items we're not going to be able to breach with these guys because of confidentiality involved.
Well, we don't know
Okay.
what the heck you're talking about anyway, so we can't release anything we don't know
Well,
about.
I'm just saying, getting into land negotiations or offers to do certain things with these particular
We're not there to do
guys.
that. We can't do that as a
Okay,
governing body.
I'm
We
just-
can only find out what they want and bring back feedback.
Okay, but I mean, I think it'd be very good for us to partner with Larry and staff when we're doing these things. We
I
can't
know
go
I
out
just
there
said that
ourselves.
staff
I know,
would
we're
be
going
with
with
us.
staff, I know, but we can't be going rogue up over and above that.
Okay, so I had, just so I can get it out there, the third thing is Waverly Road. I think we need to be, I don't know what we've done as far as contacting Edgerton about Waverly Road. I know it is a major thing for our development that's out there by Gardner Junction. Waverly Road, part of that contract has to be, Waverly Road has to be done. So I don't know, I haven't heard anything about Waverly Road in a long time. And I'd like us to be beating on Edgerton's door going, what's it gonna take to get it done? And I'm willing to go down there and beat on the door. I'm thinking that if I'm not hearing something, something needs to happen.
Well, the first thing I'd like to ask is, have we sent those plans, the preliminary plans for Waverly Road or our analysis to Edgerton to get their feedback on that?
So, sorry, I missed part of that, but Waverly Road and
Yeah.
preliminary analysis, I'd have to check on that with
Right.
her.
Yeah, I think that we had asked, 4 months ago about that, but, we probably need to get that to them. I need to get some, I think we all need to get some clarification or some
Right.
confirmation's been done.
Because here's the thing, if it was me, I'd be contacting them every week going, what do we gotta do, what do we gotta do? Because that's how that thing's gonna get resolved. And they've gotta know that we're serious and we've gotta get it done because otherwise we're gonna lose that development down there and we can't afford to do that. So-
Actually, I'm loath to ask, but what is the status of Heartland Family Farms right now, Larry?
The original project that was brought to us out of Chicago was, unfortunately, has gone away, simply because when we had our original discussions with Edgerton, the result of those was the fact that we had to go back and do a study, which is what Michael's referring to, and we took some time to do that, and we had a consultant hire. They made that. They've done a draft review back to our Public Works office who's looking at it. I don't think that the current landowner is against development. but it still goes back to the point that Waverly Road is a requirement of moving forward in that particular area. Since then, there have been additional inquiries by other developers who wish to do something on that side of town. But again, their main concern is how do we get into the park? And our last contact with Edgerton was simply the fact that they weren't very happy with the suggestions we'd made so far, and they were waiting for additional information. So I'm assuming then that that's what Michael needs to take back to them at this point in time.
I'd like to see the laundry list of whatever they'd like. I mean, that just, to me, I think that if there's something we got to do up here, we need to know, because that's going to hold up a whole lot of development on that end of town. So we know that we've got, if we're going to have some kind of, businesses that are going to service the intermodal, they got to be able to get there. So, and my fourth thing, I'm sorry, was the airport, which we already discussed, and I think we've got a plan for that. We're going to start on that plan. And then the fifth thing was the interchange, 175th and I-35. So I'd like us as a body, I mean, do you guys have, obviously probably the things are in a different path, but is there something that I didn't bring up that we need to address on these as the top 5 things that we can agree on, that no matter what order they're in, that we need to really focus on and like laser beam focus to get things done?
I would add water to that. I mean, you can have a handful of gold and no water and be just as poor. So
that's it. They got the water coming in through the upgraded systems.
Well, I'm talking about a water source B and a water source C. So I think we need to look at our relationship with Water 7 and our relationship with Water 1 and understand what the investment is, understand what the chemical makeup of treatment of water is, understand what the current contract we have with Water 7 and what reciprocation is there, so that we have some alternative sources versus all of them in one lake. Also understand if we wanted to pull water from Gardner Lake, that's a $20 to $30 million back of the napkin investment for water treatment plant, and compare that to
and dredging. We can't do it.
It's not. Yeah, it's not.
Yep. So there's a lot of hiccups there, right? Compared to Water 1 laying a 2.5 mile, 2 mile pipe and tying into that. That's what I would add to your list, and it would probably be higher than 3 or 4. I-35 being the number 1.
Anyone else?
Thoughts?
I concur.
Okay. All right. Well, that's what I just.
So write water in your list.
Yeah, I'll write it on that. And then that's it. I just, to me, I just don't see things moving as fast as I'd like them to, and I'd like to rectify them. So I see it as I have another year here, and something better be done before I leave. So.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. That's it for me.
All right. Mark Baldwin, you have anything for staff?
I'd just like to echo that I'm 100% for getting across the interstate. Everything hinges on that development. So I would love to have updates. If we need to have another work session on it like we did in January, I'm all for that. So if we need to have a prioritization meeting, I'm for that. And I'm definitely for a work session on the airport. It sounds like we have a lot of questions regarding income, expenses, what the council wants to actually agree to as far as what's going to look like out there, and then how that prioritizes with everything else we're trying to do. So that's really all I have for tonight.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
I might just add on, especially like going across 35, maybe some of that stuff, because of the sensitive nature, might be better in executive session on some of that for updating. Obviously, if there's communities who want to talk about it, but
Okay.
That's it.
Great. Thanks. Actually, we're having an executive session on potential acquisition of property. So,
I held up on some stuff.
Lee, Council President.
I won't rehash any of the airport stuff. We already talked about it, but that was on my list for tonight. Actually, one thing I would like to see is whenever we get an inspection report like this or a fire inspection report, it would be nice to have, along with the report, a compliance matrix, basically just saying, this is the problem, this is the resolution, this is the date at which we expect to finish. So it'd be nice to have that, because I don't think we got that with this Apex environmental thing that was done 1.5 years ago. None of the things that were identified in this report, as far as I know, have been addressed. And on the 6th, we received the fire inspection reports in the Friday Minute Memo. I'm not aware of any of those things that have been complied with or addressed in any way. I see the airport as an existing asset. The bathroom out there is like any other bathroom the city owns. If there was a toilet here that didn't work in this building, I guarantee you there'd be, it would be, Katie bar the door to get the thing fixed right away, and it would be no problem. But we got buildings out there where the bathroom's not fixed and hasn't been fixed, and there's no plan to fix it. Well, yeah, for at least 1 year now. So that's a problem as far as I'm concerned. We have a fundamental responsibility to the things that we own and the things that we're stewards of. So that's all I got for that soapbox. Gutter forms, backfill concrete on the, I think it was White Drive, over in Willow Springs. When they poured the gutters, they cut out the asphalt. They used a form in there to form the gutter that they poured. They did a really nice job on the gutters themselves, but when they removed the form, they went back in that space between the asphalt and the curb, and they filled it with a really coarse aggregate concrete, and it doesn't seem like it's sealing. It doesn't. I don't know how it's going to seal the road. So I'm wondering if we have an answer for that, and if we've had the acceptance inspection. Because when I mentioned this a couple of meetings ago, we said that, oh, well, it's probably not done yet, and we still have acceptance inspections to do and things like that. So I'm wondering where we are with that, and if that was deemed acceptable, because I'm still getting questions about it from folks.
No, so no, that was not deemed acceptable at any point in time. The contractor is aware that it's unacceptable, and they've been trying some different fixes over the last week, and I'll need to follow up with our engineering staff as far as if they've resolved what they're going to do to ultimately fix the issue. But from the start, they had been told that it was unacceptable by our engineering staff. And I believe that there was a Friday Minute Memo after that meeting that went out that said that. But since that time, they have been working with the contractor on potential fixes.
From the standpoint, and I'll just ask a question as a follow-up, of the inspection scheme, and I'm talking about the resources available to inspect. In your opinion, Michael, do we have sufficient resources to do those inspections, given the load of the volume of roads that are being worked on right now?
So we do have our engineering staff. We have our project engineer, and then also our engineering technician. And they're working a lot of hours. They are keeping up with the inspections. However, we do have a vacant position that if we could fill it would help tremendously.
Oh, I believe so.
It's been vacant for quite a while. We've had very few candidates for that position.
Have we posted that position publicly?
Yeah, it's been posted both internally and publicly. I'd have to get with HR staff to follow up, but
okay.
Since last fall, early last fall.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to get an update on that at some point and see where.
And on the engineering positions in general, I would say that all the municipalities are having difficulty filling them. It's very difficult to find skilled quality folks in the engineering profession.
I understand. Well, we just recently very good ones. So. All right. Anything else from you?
I don't have anything, Mayor, thank you.
Okay, great. All right, now we will move on to executive session, and we're going to modify, I think there was there's a entering into executive session. We're going to change that from pursuant to attorney-client privilege to pursuing or related to this preliminary discussion of acquisition of real property. It's where I'm looking for 10 minutes, so do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Moore, second Melton, that we recess into executive session pursuant to KSA 75-4319B6, preliminary discussion of the acquisition of real property. All those in favor, not to last more than 10 minutes, which would be 9:15 to 9:25. Recessing at 9:15, coming back in the regular session at 9:25. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? We are in recess.
I'll call you, Mark.
Okay.
Do I have a motion to resume regular session?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Moore, second Belton, that we resume regular session. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? We are back in regular session. I have a motion for an executive session to discuss matters related to non-elected personnel.
So moved.
Hey, how long?
We'll get there.
Oh, sorry.
Second.
All right. Motion Moore, second Winters, that we recess into executive session pursuant to KSA 75-4319B1 to discuss personnel matters related to non-elected personnel beginning at 9:26 p.m. and returning at 9:56 p.m. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? We stand in recess. That we resume regular session. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? We are back in regular session. I'll entertain a motion to go back into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Moore, second, motion Melton, second Moore, that we, that we recess into executive session pursuant to KSA 75-4319B1 to discuss personnel matters related to non-applicant personnel, beginning at 9:57 p.m. and returning to regular session at 10:07 p.m. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? We are back in recess.